even though they don't want it on the printed page saying, yeah, we want women priests and women bishops and a woman pope. That's very clearly what they do desire.
What if I told you that just last week, there was a conference of priests in America held where 2 sitting bishops participated, in which they discussed not only mundane things like the ordination of women, priests, and bishops, but how about discussing masturbation or self-abuse as a beautiful thing, especially right after prayer? Oh yeah, we've got that from someone who was staying in the same hotel, and he's none other than Michael Hichborn, who, if you don't know him yet, you need to, because he and his Lepanto Institute have exposed some of the most horrific corruption in the church today, all with a view to bringing things back to orthodoxy. Michael, so good to be with you.
Thanks so much for having me on, John Henry.
Let's begin, as we always do, with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. So, my friend, you get around to all of the places where A, you're not wanted, B, it's going to be, it might even be dangerous for you, but you do it anyway. But you do so with a heart actually for those who are tending to try and bring them back to truth, which I think is just beautiful. They don't see it that way. I think they regard you pretty much as enemy number one.
Yeah, in fact, I did have a drink with one of the AUSCP priests who sat down with me, and he just started chatting to me, asked who I was and just my name and what I do. And I just kind of gave very bland, very nondescript answers. And so then he sat down and said, oh, well, we're here with the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests, and we're doing this and that. He just kind of sat there and talked and talked and talked. And a lot of his stuff was kind of peppered with gay this and homosexual that. And, I thought it was very odd. Well, the next day he saw me in the hallway and he stopped me and he said, what's your name really? And I said, what do you mean? I said, my name's Michael. I told you. And he said, well, are you the spokesman for some organization? And I said, well, yes, I'm the head of the Lepanto Institute. He goes, Lepanto Institute. He said, you're not very friendly to this organization, are you? I said, well, not typically. And he said, he started going on. He said, look, I got pulled aside the other day after I sat down to talk to you. And I was told by some other people that I was sitting down and having drinks with the enemy. Those were his words, the enemy. And I said, Father, I'm not here to be your enemy. I'm here to pray for you. And then he went on about how, well, you need to change your understanding of the church and you need to change your understanding of how the church operates. I said, well, it starts with doctrine. He said, yes, but you have to understand what doctrine is. We're not changing doctrine. I said, okay, well, what about Catholic morality? And he said, well, Catholic morality comes from your understanding of doctrine. And he just kind of went on. But all of this, steeped in modernism, changing our understanding of a reality without changing the reality itself, is exactly what the AUSCP is all about.
Unbelievable. Okay, so the Association of United States Catholic Priests, a yearly meeting they held, and it's being attended by 2 sitting bishops of the United States. Who are they?
Bishop John Stowe of Lexington, Kentucky is an actual member of the AUSCP, and Archbishop John Wester, who is the Episcopal moderator for the AUSCP, was also in attendance. I saw them both. In fact, Bishop Stowe kind of addressed the Lepanto Institute or the Lepanto people in one of his sessions, decrying my organization and saying that, we've probably given them enough material this time around. And I said, well, you really have no idea.
Okay, this is really odd because in times previous to Francis, I know it's been a long time, but nonetheless, if a bishop were to advocate for women priests, they would get disciplined, sometimes even removed if they were unwilling to recant. But this organization is very upfront about promoting women's ordination, not only to the diaconate, which seems to be in vogue nowadays, but also to the priesthood and even beyond. Let us know about that.
So it's very true. We've got several reports that we put together showing how the AUSCP wants to have these priestless parishes. And, they're using it as a stepping stone, saying, well, we need to have these lay ministers who will then be appointed as worship leaders, and it can be women. And then if we have worship leaders who are women, you might as well ordain them to deacons. Well, if you have women who are already ordained as deacons, you might as well just give them the faculties as a priest. So as I was rounding the corner outside the cathedral there, San Fernando Cathedral in San Antonio, I'm holding a sign that said AUSCP supports women's ordination. And the priest that you reported on earlier this month, or earlier last month, really, Father Frederick Daly, the priest from Syracuse, New York, who said that gay mass and had the gay flag and all that, he was coming in the opposite direction. And he looked at my sign and he said, we sure do. And I said, you sure do what? Support women's ordination? He goes, yes. I said, ordination to what? The priesthood? He said, to the diaconate, to the priesthood, as bishops, as pope. Those were his exact words to me. And he was speaking on behalf of the AUSCP. He said, we support, not I. He said we. And the other priests that were there with him did not correct him.
Wow. Okay, so in case anybody's wondering what Michael's referring to, this clip is from that crazy LGBT mass that this Father Daly did. He's from Syracuse, New York, if I'm not mistaken. And you might have thought you've seen all of the wacko LGBT kind of masses with felt banners and a rainbow stole until you saw this. Watch.
Namaste. Namaste. A warm welcome to all of us in church, and let us welcome those joining us at home. And we're invited to recall once again that as we gather to worship today, we're on the territory of the Onondaga Nation. A warm welcome to everyone in church. Let's welcome those at home. Did we just do that?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so that's who we're dealing with, and he came up to you. So it's very interesting because I'm always still stunned. That priest, the most out there priest on LGBT, is still a priest in good standing in the Diocese of Syracuse, and yet Father Altman is not. We have Bishop Strickland, who is out of his diocese. There's still a priest and bishop in good standing with the church. I mean, they're able to celebrate the sacrament still, but they are kicked out of the diocese. The Father Daly, and I guess most of the priests at the AUSCP meeting, and Bishop Stowe and Bishop Wester are both sitting bishops. I'm just stunned.
Well, it goes a step further. Now, Father Frederick Daly he is actually a member of the AUSCP. I have here the AUSCP's list of donors from 24 to 25. He's listed as one of their additional donors. But here I have the AUSCP's program book from this particular assembly. And it's very interesting because they had a section on their working groups. And this section on women in the church, they said here right at the end, we are in the process of finalizing a document for clergy titled Pastoral Responses and Resources for Priests and Bishops Replying to Women Who Feel Called to Ministries That Exist and Ministries That Do Not Yet Exist. So when you put into context with what Father Daly said to me, with this particular statement, it's very clear where they're going with this, even though they don't want it on the printed page saying, yeah, we want women priests and women bishops and a woman pope. That's very clearly what they do desire.
It's very interesting because they're playing this game, kind of like Father James Martin does, with courting error while trying to stay within the confines, as it were, but they kind of lose it every once in a while. And it really does expose the agenda. That's why I thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because you're really helping to show the truth of the matter, which is, despite they're trying to hide themselves in a veneer of, oh no, we're still Orthodox.
It's interesting. One of the things that I collected, I had this little button, love is love, with a cross and the rainbow. I mean, it's blasphemous. But I also found this little sticker, WWJE, who would Jesus exclude? And the obvious answer is, well, they're talking about immigrants being excluded from the United States, and they're talking about the LGBT community being excluded from the church. But what's interesting about that is at the same time that they have these things, I have a supporter who was attending the Rosary Rally with us. We actually have video of it. And he told me this story about how he accidentally went up to the AUSCP floor in the hotel. And while he was there, he asked for Michael Hichborn, and they said, Michael Hichborn, he is not welcome here. So who would Jesus exclude? Well, clearly he would exclude Michael Hichborn. When the AUSCP was preparing to process over to the cathedral to hear Mass from Archbishop Siller, somebody got up at the podium and started instructing them how to avoid our Rosary Rally. So he told them, go in through the back. And then he said, by the way, you should know the Lepanto people don't have a permit. So hopefully by the end of the day, they'll all be in jail. So, it's incredible to think at the same time they're out there saying, we don't want illegal immigrants to be thrown in jail. We don't want these criminals who are here illegally thrown in jail. We don't want Black Lives Matter protesters, mostly peaceful protesters. We don't want them in jail either. But the people who are out there praying for us, we want them in jail.
Very interesting. All the blather about not excluding, and yet there it is. And unfortunately for those, and the whole reason why you're doing this is because Jesus does exclude.
Yes.
Those who are sinners will be excluded from Christ. Not so much that Jesus excludes, he gives them the way because he is the way, the truth, and life. And no man will come to the Father but by him. And by rejecting him, they are excluding themselves from eternal life.
For U.S. residents, creating a will has never been easier. Thanks to My Legacy Will, an online platform free of charge, you can now create your own will and choose to include LifeSite news in it. Specify where your funeral will take place, the number of masses to be offered for your soul, and how your estate would be distributed. We would be deeply grateful if you remembered LifeSite news in your will. Visit mylegacywill.com/LifeSite news. Thank you for your support, and may God bless you.
Let's get on to this one thing, because probably the most horrendous thing is this thing you mentioned about what's going on with masturbation, self-abuse. They're talking about that. They're talking about it openly. What's going on there? I mean, that's so disgusting. It is considered a sin, by the way, in the Catholic Church. Everybody thinks, they just pick on the gays and blah, 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 and that's all they talk about, and the women who have abortions. Well, actually, no. The Church has all sorts of teachings on purity, which encompass not only homosexuality, but also heterosexuality. And part of the biggest curses we have today that's obviously associated with pornography, which, by the way, Our Lady warned about as being like a superhighway to hell when she said more souls go to hell because of sins of impurity than for any other reason. This issue of self-abuse, as it used to be called, is majorly a problem. And yet even that, they're saying, is not a problem.
So one of the things that I heard, and it was deeply disturbing, and I will be putting out a report on this, a highly detailed report once we get everything figured out. But what I heard was that in one of the meetings, there was a long and lengthy discussion on homosexuals and homosexuals in the church and how to pastorally care for them and that kind of thing. And at some point, there were priests that were raising their hands and admitting that they were homosexuals. What that means, I don't know exactly. I mean, does it mean that they have same-sex attraction, or does it mean that they're acting on it? I don't know. I can't verify that. But there were at least priests in the room standing up and saying, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay. And then they were talking about self-abuse, as you pointed out. And at least one of these men who was admitting to this behavior and admitting to this inclination started talking about how he looks at self-abuse as a prayerful exercise, that he prays while he does that. And he thinks that it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful gift that God had given him. And when you think about that particular disposition, now, regardless of the visual here, what I'm concerned with is that I can guarantee not a single priest in that room told him that what he is doing is mortally sinful, and that if he continues to do it and have this idea that it's actually a good thing, that priest will land in hell. He is condemning himself, and by promoting it, what is he saying in the confessional? What advice is he giving to young men who are coming to him and confessing self-abuse? Is he telling them that it's okay? And when you think,
or worse, is he telling them that it's beautiful and do it with prayer?
Right. And on top of that, if he is one of the self-professed homosexuals in the room, well, what phantasms is he entering into his mind as he's doing this? There are all sorts of questions here that come along with that kind of thinking. And it's a horribly, horribly disturbing thing to have been told. And I am horrified at the fact that this was even discussed, let alone out in the open. But there it is.
It's not actually all that surprising that we devolve more and more, because once you leave the truth, once you leave the truth of Christ and you go down these avenues that you think are, oh, they're wonderful for the human psyche and this is where we want to go because we want to make it positive, you will go further and further away from the truth. And that means into evil. The popular argument that I think is used a lot of times to justify that behavior, not so much that he's kind of sanctified it or trying to sanctify it, but to at least justify it's like, I'm not hurting anyone else. But they're bringing it to a new level of this is a wonderful practice and it's so good that it's part of prayer. But this is the thing. You end up with a different religion where you glorify evil, and then you turn all morality on its head. So good becomes evil and evil becomes good.
Yes, and in fact, the prophet Isaiah warned, avoid those who proclaim bitter for sweet and call evil good. We were warned about this. But even more to the point, when you start to consider the fact that these men want to change the way the church approaches things. I mean, the title of this particular meeting was Sexuality and Spirituality, Pastoral Approaches. So they're saying, well, we're not changing doctrine, as that one priest who told me in the hallway. We're not changing doctrine. We're not, against doctrine. But they're changing the way the church understands the doctrine, or they're trying to change the way the church approaches matters pastorally in light of doctrine. So it's that they're creating a cognitive dissonance by saying that you can believe one thing and act in a different way. It's the same kind of cognitive dissonance that you have with politicians who say, well, I'm personally pro-life, but ... I'm going to vote in favor of abortion. I'm going to vote in favor of same-sex marriage. Well, you can't have the belief of one thing. Our Lord said it very, very, very clearly. You cannot serve two masters. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to serve the master of their bodies while professing to follow the master of the church. And it's a lie.
Well, let's talk finally about, and conclude with this, about the two prelates in the room, because there are all these wayward priests there. There's an association of probably many priests. Do you know how many priests in the U.S. belong to this group?
The AUSCP claims to have about 1,500 to 2,000 members.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. But we know they have two sitting bishops. Again, Bishop Stowe from Lexington, Kentucky, and Bishop Wester from Santa Fe, New Mexico. First of all, those within those dioceses should probably think twice about who their shepherd is. But how can people reach out and do something about this? Because in that case, in the case of the bishops, this is the most severe thing you can get. Where can people appeal to? How do they appeal to Rome on this? And what's your thoughts that way?
We do have a new pope. So hopefully we can see some real change in the Vatican, but we'll see. In the meantime, I do recommend that people write to the nuncio, go to our reports, outline all of the different things that we've put together about the AUSCP, and tie in all the bishops that we've talked about who have participated with, supported, and lauded the AUSCP. In fact, Archbishop Stiller, who said Mass for the AUSCP down in San Antonio. And
that was this time.
That was this time. And in his homily to the AUSCP, he was saying, I've been following what you do, and I've been hearing from my brother bishops what a wonderful organization you are. And he went on and on and on talking about how great they are. And, when you have a sitting archbishop in his diocese invite the AUSCP and say mass for them, talk about the wonderful things that they're doing in light of what we have uncovered about the AUSCP, there's a very serious problem in the church, because the AUSCP is getting top cover from archbishops and bishops and cardinals throughout the United States. I've seen Cardinal McElroy.
Wait, just before you go on there, that's very serious. So you're saying that the Archbishop of San Antonio, Texas, Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller, celebrated the opening mass for this heretical group of priests. He's the same one who went after the ranch of the family, Dan Savigny's ranch. He's the same one that took to task this Divine Mercy community down there. He's the one pushed aside the Latin Mass. But doing this, that's quite something, because this is a whole new thing. What other bishops have participated with this AUSCP?
So I want to give a shout out first to SAFA, which is a local pro-life organization. They really did yeoman's work in trying to come and assist us at these rosary rallies. But they got a recording of Archbishop Siller's homily at the Mass for the AUSCP, and I'll be sharing that with you, and I'll share that with our supporters too. But the other bishops and cardinals that have participated with AUSCP include Cardinal McElroy, Cardinal Supich, Cardinal Wilton Gregory, Bishop Gumbleton, who is now deceased.
But hold on. So you just said Cardinal Supich, Cardinal McElroy, and Cardinal Gregory.
Yeah. 3
of the leading churchmen in the United States, the kingmakers, if you will. And they're all supportive of the AUSCP.
They've definitely been supportive. They've spoken at their conferences, and they've participated in some of their events. We also have Archbishop Hebda, who invited them into his diocese. He sent Bishop Pates to go participate. We have Archbishop Rosansky from St. Louis. He invited them in, said mass for them. Archbishop Carlson said mass for the AUSCP. We've got Archbishop Hartmeyer, who participated in some of their events, spoke at one of their events, and has participated, said mass for the AUSCP. And there are a couple of others that I'm forgetting right off the top of my head, but there's a very serious problem when you have that kind of Episcopal participation in an organization that is designed specifically to change the church's understanding of who she is, what her priesthood is, what the sacraments are, and even the most basic fundamentals of Catholic morality. All of those things are being tossed up by the AUSCP, and these bishops are giving them all sorts of latitude in the United States.
We're going to make a list of those for both our story on this interview over at LifeSite News, and you'll notice down in the notes under this the names of those bishops and cardinals as well, because I think the faithful need to know. Michael Hichborn, as always, you've done an incredible job amidst hard work and thankless, at least from some quarters. But I know that all of us here at LifeSite News are very grateful for all your work. God bless you. And we will continue to pray for you.
Thank you so much.
And God bless all of you. And we'll see you next time.
Aloha, everyone. This is Jason Jones for LifeSite News. We hope you enjoyed this video. For more content like this, check the link in the description. You can also connect with us on social media to stay up to date with the latest news on life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.